our thinking was, could we actually deliver a product experience that gives you the best of both worlds, where you don't have to imagine everything, you get all of the opinions of a lead router from day one, so you can open it up, it looks and feels like a lead router, it doesn't feel like a Zapier blank canvas. But if you lift up the hood and want to engineer things, you get all these Zapier primitive building blocks to the point where it feels like you can edit the SaaS yourself.
Welcome to LaunchPod, the show from LogRocket, where we sit down with top product and digital leaders. Today, we're joined by Phil Lakin, Head of Enterprise Innovation at Zapier. In this episode, we discuss how Phil built no-code ops into a thriving community and SaaS product, and what led to its acquisition by Zapier, why Phil ended up leading the initiative on Zapier's first solution-based product, and the decision process behind making it lead router, and how Zapier is driving AI transformation across both their org and others, with hands-on bootcamps, agent workflows, and a 97% AI literacy rate among employees. So here's our episode with Phil Lakin. Phil, welcome to the show, man. I am stoked to have you on. This one's been a little while in the making.
Yeah, here we are. We did it.
We got through. You're recovered. Oddly enough, though, like last time I think we talked, you were coming off some back procedure, and now I went and this past weekend screwed up my back. Not nearly as bad, but I'm like sitting here all propped up and stuff. Yeah, brutal, dude.
A few weeks laid up in bed for like an automation person who likes to just constantly be tinkering with stuff. Blessing and a curse. I think I invented like 10 new products.
Spent $10,000 on OpenAI calls and stuff like that.
I kid you not, at one point during my recovery, I had to ping my buddies at Zite, which is just like an AI app builder. And I was like, hey guys, like, here's the thing. I'm already paying for the pro plan, which like I barely ever pay for SaaS, right? Like, because just like I just get a lot of free SaaS, right? Just given my role at Zapier. And like I pay for you guys already. I'm hitting limits every day. This is the only thing keeping me happy. Will you please just temporarily remove my limits? And they did, which was really nice.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, you gave him a shout out here. See, so now even more people.
Look at that karma. Yeah, Zite's my favorite. Like kind of like think about like vibe coding public applications tool. So like Lovable and all that stuff. They're my favorite.
I will have to check that out. I use Lovable a lot as well, but I'll have to check out Zite. So
wait till you crack in, man. It's good.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, on your end, stoked to have you on, like I was saying, because, you have done really interesting things. You started No Code Ops, which was a community and company around basically building ops tools without, no code. It got acquired by Zapier. You're over there now, head of enterprise innovation. And just basically you get to, it might not be this cool, but when I look at it from when I see you post on LinkedIn and what you talk about, what we've talked about, basically it seems like you just get to do cool stuff at an awesome company, built with AI, but you also put out their first like solutionized product that they've done up until, everyone I'm sure is familiar with Zapier. It's building blocks and a lot of how to stitch stuff together, but they actually put out now a real solution that does lead routing, and that was all you. So maybe let's start at the beginning here.
Yeah, I do want to make one clarification. I was definitely on the team as like for our first vertical role, like help lead it from the early days. It was very much a team effort, and I want to give a big shout out to that team. Especially, I always call him like the real PM, the adult in the room that took over and like partnered with me from the early days, which is JB. He's the guy, and like all the other people that the Eng, like all the folks like that helped build it and get it to where it is. Like this was a large project, and I'd say it was JB and I's kind of like baby, and now JB is like really taking it to the next level. I'm working on the AI transformation stuff at Zapier, but yeah, I have to call that out.
Yeah. I thought you just did it all in Zite in Zapier.
No, I wish.
Good. Yeah. It is always great though that like, I think that's an interesting thing about product or, marketing or any kind of company, right? No one ever does it by themselves. And a huge part of it is that bigger ecosystem around and how do you enable it? How do you work with people and all that. But yeah, no, I'm glad you called that out.
Look, I mean, the journey on this front really, it did start with all the no code ops stuff where I was like figuring out how to be a product manager for a SaaS company that I'd never done that before. So yeah.
So how'd you get there, man? I mean, like you were at Get and Compass and like legitimate companies, and then you went, know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a company / community or just community.
Yeah. So the short of it is that when I was at Get, I got asked to build out a driver onboarding platform because everything was being done manually with like pen and paper to onboard drivers in our office in New York. We were going up against Uber and Lyft, and like we needed an edge. And so they asked me to be able to onboard drivers in the field and do it electronically. And I said, cool, like what team do I work with? And they're like, no, man, like you're an ops, like you don't get a team. And so I did just sit up every night for like a month, just like late at night into the night, just researching and Googling like different tools. And I didn't know what they were called at the time, but I looked at a bunch of terms, apps, white label, no code eventually, right? All these terms I would just like figure out. But then I eventually built a process. It was terrible. It barely worked.
But it worked.
But it worked. And then we refined it over time. And the stack ended up being Pronto Forms, which is like an app that can live on an iPad that can, take in forms, but it can do it offline because like we had terrible service when we were out in the field. So that was really cool. We used Google Sheets as the kind of like driver tracking system, and all the data would get sent there. And we use Zapier to connect everything. That's where I discovered like Zapier, and I really leaned in. And so, yeah, built a process that onboarded like over 25,000 drivers under like a year and a half. And like, it was nuts. And so eventually, that company combined with another company called Juno. They brought all of us one day from the US branch into a very nice hotel room. And there was like the very expensive Fiji bottles of water on the table. And I was like, oh, they spent money on the water. This is not going to be a good meeting. And so, they let the whole company go. It happens in tech. It's a rite of passage. And then, I spent a few months like figuring out like, dude, what do I even do? Like, I don't even know what I do. Like, I do a little bit of this no codey stuff. I do like some onboarding stuff. And I eventually found, Compass, who actually reached out to me through his platform called Underdog. They're like, it's funny, we're looking for someone exactly like you who can use no-code tools to help with onboarding. And I was like, get out. Like, this is a real job. I eventually not only did that, but like eventually became the first solutions architect at the entire company to work across all of operations doing no and low code projects. Fell in love with the field. No code started blowing up around that time. And I had this idea where I was just like, look, I was watching communities like MakerPad, oddly enough, also acquired by Zapier, that were blowing up. But all these communities at the time, MakerPad, no code founders, like we're all about founders and people building startup or SaaS tools with no code, not the internal ops people like me. And so I wanted to build a community for people like me, right? Like ops nerds, the entrepreneurs who are like building stuff, figuring stuff out, navigating internal politics, And it turns out that around that time, there was a lot of people starting to be considered marketing ops, sales ops, people ops, which are essentially the verticalized version of all of those things. And so I started putting out a newsletter. That newsletter then became a community. The community then rolled into like us doing some services for some companies. And this was when I met my co-founder, Brent, who was in San Francisco at the time. We knew we wanted to build tooling for this audience, and we knew we wanted to build a SaaS tool. So we raised venture, and then I put in my 2 weeks notice at Compass once the first check from our first investor hit the bank. That was that.
There you go. And then you built it into a community of like 1,500 plus people, and Zapier came a knocking.
Yeah. So the short-ish story there is, I'd love to say I built a community. I'm a terrible community manager. I know.
Hard.
Yeah. It's really hard. I'm just gonna be honest. Like I'm really good at like the community canvas stuff, like thinking about, what's going to get people jazzed about a community, or I'm really good at community marketing, like getting people into the community. Keeping the community alive, which is arguably the hardest part, and keeping everyone happy and programming, I am god awful at. So thank God we had this woman, Claudia Cafeo, who was our full-time community manager, and she built the community to 1,500 people. And so, we built this community, we learned their issues, their challenges, and we ended up building an observability tool called Operator, where like essentially a change management tool. If you were to change a field here, what's it going to break somewhere else? And so a lot of hard work there, lots of battle scars and lessons learned, man. But yeah, eventually we got really close with Zapier. Wade was an early investor in ours, the CEO there. And then about a year ago, we were acquired, and now I'm the head of enterprise innovation here doing stuff.
Nice. And one of the benefits of that is, like we talked about the very top of the show, you got to be a part of the team that, and a big part of the team that put out, Zapier's been around forever, and it's always been like connect more things and more triggers and more workflows, but now actually putting out solutions. And now, is this like something coded and built separately? Is it just like Zapier parts put together? Like, what is I'm just kind of nerding out on this one.
Yeah. Really, really interesting. So let me describe it like this, right? So first of all, when I was first at Zapier, I'm going to admit this on a product podcast, self-aware, I'm an okay product person. I'm not great, right? Like, thank God for JB. Do you know what I mean? Vision wise, I think I'm a little bit better, but day-to-day product management, I am not great. I'm okay. Now, founder mode and figuring stuff out, like going from 0 to 1, and the marketing of stuff and like the full cycle of that and like the iterations that go in between, that I feel pretty strong at, right? And so basically when I came to Zapier, they were like, Phil, we want you to partner with JB from Product here and just figure out like what vertical do we start with and what do we build for them? That was just like the big open canvas because we knew we wanted to go into some kind of verticalized solution. It was like a pretty easy decision around like, hey, let's start with revenue ops because like, let's be honest, revenue teams get all the money, they get all the tools, right? Like
There's a big push in the, what was it, go-to-market engineering right
go-to-market
now
engineering,
and all that
right?
kind
From
of
like the
stuff.
play team, all that stuff, right? So there's clearly something there where there's like a lot of money and like,
Yeah.
let's just go there. Like, let's not maybe build a new HR tool.
I mean, it is a good way to right prioritize a market. Who has money that they can take from their pocket and give to our pocket?
Yep.
So
Yep. Who's
yeah,
got money to spend and who's got expensive problems, that we
yeah.
can solve, right? And so
And lead routing is a real problem, right? Like I've lived that, and
big,
it's always one you could solve better. So
big. That was kind of just like, let's throw a dart at the board and let's just start somewhere, right? So we started with RevOps. But now where we started RevOps, that was a lot more in depth, right? So we said, there's all these different areas of RevOps that people are already doing on Zapier. So they're doing inbound lead routing. They're doing some outbound stuff. They're doing stuff across different stages of the sales process. They're doing all these orchestration things like building deal rooms automatically in Slack and like they're doing all these different things. So the question was, what SaaS are people paying for that does these things better than Zapier? And like find those, right? And then look at the differences between the two and see like where would it make sense to really expand our footprint? And so this is the big equation that we knew we wanted to solve, right? Before we picked a specific kind of area to start, right? In terms of like revenue orchestration, let's call it, because there's so many areas, right? There's the full inbound flow, there's outbound flows, there's communications along the deal cycle, right? There's all these different like vertical specific orchestrations. And by the way, orchestration is just like a series of automations and potentially human in the loop steps. So it's just not one zap. It's like many automations, right? Connected together. So we said this was our goal. This was like the most well-articulated thing of the early days of the project when everything was super messy. Zapier is like Lego blocks, really easy to build whatever you want. But the problem with that is that you've got to know what's possible, right? Which a lot of people don't. Then you've got to have the time to build it. And then you've got to have the time to maintain and update it. People have that time for like, oh, someone submitted a form, send it to our CRM, maybe do some lead enrichment. That's easy, right? Building a whole lead routing system on that, like a 95-step journey and maintaining that bad boy.
yeah, no, thank you.
And we looked at ourselves and we're like, this is a terrible experience. It's cool that you can build a 95-step Zap doing lead routing. That is genuinely a terrible experience. And there's companies literally been built around the fact that that is a terrible experience. So we know that. And not to also add into lead routing, which is super spicy, SDR and BDRs have high turnover. So in a lead routing dedicated vertical SaaS app, you change your list of BDRs, SDRs in one place. In Zapier, if you don't change it in the exact 6 places it needs, everything breaks. That's a terrible experience. We know that. So then we said, but on the other hand, these vertical SaaS apps, right? You need so many of these different apps for so many different parts of orchestration. They can get very expensive sometimes. And the second you need them to do something that they're not used to doing or integrate with something that, they don't really integrate with, it also kind of breaks down. Our thinking was, could we actually deliver a product experience that gives you the best of both worlds, where you don't have to imagine everything. You get all of the opinions of a lead router from day one, right? So you can open it up. It looks and feels like a lead router. It doesn't feel like a Zapier blank canvas. But if you lift up the hood and want to engineer things, you get all these Zapier primitive building blocks to the point where it feels like you can edit the SaaS yourself without knowing the code.
I mean, I can't speak for other companies, but that has been the problem. Is we built our own lead routing, and some of it was Zapier, some of it was actually just internally built code, and then we ended up going to a solution, and we went back to another thing, and we went back to a self-built thing, and now we're on external, bought purchased solution. But it's always the ping pong of
always
too customizable, too much debt that we always have to maintain, doesn't do all the things we want, and then someone gets frustrated. We have to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And
right.
There's never, so I have to check this out ourselves, actually.
Yeah. No, for sure. So, new customer scored.
Yeah, right.
Woo, JB, I got a new intro coming. The whole idea is we wanted to build something in the middle, right? And the idea was, could we not only do this for lead routing and RevOps for other folks too, right? Where it's like, look, no matter how easy we make Zaps to build, and by the way, if you could type a plain sentence, you can build a Zap now. We have like an AI copilot where if you could type sentence, it'll build the Zap for you. But even still, that's a lot of cognitive load to ask somebody when they're used to just buying SaaS, right? There's all different types of buyers and there's all different types for building. And by the way, most normal people who are like figure it out, tinkery, no coder people like me, they don't want to build if they don't have to. I like to build because I'm a nerd. Most people are just like, just give me the thing, man. and then I'll let you know when I'm pissed off about it. So we want to be able to deliver that experience, but allowing you to lift up the hood. And so that was our challenge. And then the other challenge was choosing one place to start, because the other problem in product is when you're competing with other people that are already established in a category, you don't just get to do one thing better than them. So one of the hard lessons we learned was the ability to lift up the hood and customize wasn't a good enough pull to be like, you're willing to sacrifice some of the other basic features you have and some of the lead routing capabilities you have from other systems yet.
People don't switch tools for, oh, it's a little bit better. You have to be 3x or 5x or 10x better depending on what the functionality is to get someone to come over. And then on top of it, like you certainly can't do key things less well. It's not like there's only one or two tools in this space. Yeah, it's a great area. Like it leans into your specialties, I think, both on your end and Zapier's end. And you already had ops teams in, but at the same time, it is not an unpopular space to try and solve this problem.
It's a really good problem space, but because of that, yeah, it's a little bit of a blood red ocean. And the part of it that we thought was going to be deep blue was like, oh, you can customize it, but it's like, yeah, but the waters get a little murky when like we're missing some of the basics. So like, I'd say that's the challenge. And like, I think we've done now a pretty good job at that. But you know, where that came from was just like, it's like the basics of product, right? But like, I mean, like we just talked to like 75 different folks about this stuff, right? And the hard part was figuring out who was giving us what type of information. So we kind of broke it into like these different areas of like, if they're a Zapier user who's using us for this stuff, well, clearly they're going to love this, right? Because they've identified the problem, they've built with it, and this just makes it way easier to manage, right? But I'd say that's the smaller percent. The bigger folks we're going after is they're going to look at this and go, well, it really needs to have all these features for me to want to switch. And so we had to build all those features, which like I'd say we're getting pretty darn comparable, which is really cool to see. And yeah, and so now like when you go into this lead routing product in Zapier, it literally just looks like lead routing SaaS, but you can lift up the hood and do crazy stuff to the automations, because what it's essentially doing in the background, this front end, and this is I think the magic here, is this opinionated front end is building a huge Zapier workflow in the back end for you. And that's pretty radical.
You guys just basically built a magic front end that obfuscates the Zap building. So
right. But it isn't a blank chat window.
Right. It's an actual opinionated
piece of UI that you know and love.
Right. Which probably actually makes the Zap infrastructure behind it better, because it can be more focused. It's not, you know, a giant ocean of options. It is somewhat constrained. How did you kind of go from that like first go, which is talking to Zapier customers who are used to building everything for themselves, and kind of go to the next step of like, okay, there's this group of people who, like you said, they want a lot more of the bells and whistles. They want it to be, some things need to be better, some things to be as good. And kind of how did you start to prioritize and figure out what that feedback was and what they needed and what they really needed versus what they just kind of thought they needed?
Look, there's no secret here, man. Like,
there never is. I'm always digging for like the secret thing.
I just went to every competitor's website, looked up all of their case studies, and reached out to all of those people. It's just a lot of work in the weeds. And like in this early days, there was no like UXR support. It was just like, dude, you guys are a 0 to 1 startup here at Zapier, figure it out, right? I was like, cool. If I were to find customers that I needed to talk to in this space, how would I find them? Okay. I could like rely on some like super crappy technographic data from some B2B enrichment firm, or I can literally just go to their websites and look at case studies,
right,
and reach out to those people.
It is amazing, by the way, like how much people are willing to talk about things.
My
I
God.
have never had a problem reaching out to almost any function like, hey, I'm curious about how you do this thing. As long, you know, obviously not competitors, but short of that, people are wildly willing to talk about the things they've done.
Especially if you have a good household name behind you. But yeah, like, so look, we talked to all those folks, and to determine to your earlier question, like what we found out was like needed, not needed, right? I'd love to say there's a magic formula there, but it's just a lot of trial and error. Here's the thing that I learned though, and this is maybe tying back to a lesson learned from the no code ops side. This is a really tough one. And by the way, I'm still open to figuring out, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too. It's really hard to know sometimes, right? Whether you're one feature away from gold or when to just cut your losses and stop digging and start a new tunnel and throw in the towel. I would say with no code ops, like we fell into that with operator. I think we fell into the trap of just like one more feature. Like if we just had one more feature, if we just connected one more tool, if we just had this. But I think at the end of the day, the problem we were solving, funny, now it's a big problem, of course, with AI, right? So now there's all these like huge funded companies like trying to solve exactly what we were trying to solve around like observability and downstream impact. But the problem is no code automation never had the zeitgeist effect that AI has. So it was just like not as popular as a problem to solve for CIOs and CTOs. Whereas like now they're being forced to solve this thing. So it's like, because their CEOs are like, we need It's like, well, that means a lot of things that I now have to observe and monitor. Whereas like the other world of no code was like, it's yes, marketing ops people are using it. We really don't care.
Right.
So
Once in a while, the wrong rep might get a lead and it'll be fine. It's not a big deal.
we'll be okay. Right? Who cares, right? So that's the thing. I think with that, we were a little bit ahead of our time in the problem. But at that time, looking back, we were not one feature away from gold. But we thought that we were. You got to be careful there because customers will always tell you, oh, if it just has this, if it just has this, if it just has this.
I've learned the hard way at some companies that there is problems that people have and the problems that you're solving. And like you said, you weren't one feature away. You were a couple of years of market evolution away and one feature.
And also that, yeah. Probably
Well, like one feature you can solve, but you can't outgrow your market, right? Your market more than anything else. Obviously, if you suck, like your market doesn't define the fact that you suck.
Change how you talk to your market.
Right.
And by the way, I have plenty of experience with that at Zapier too, right? Where like we took this whole program of like running workshops at Zapier. This is the program that I'm working on now, where it's like I was running all of these AI workshops at Zapier. That was like the big thing I got asked to do when I, left the vertical program and went into this new role where I'm doing like a lot of AI training and was doing a lot of teaching and workshops and boot camps and hackathons and experiments with customers who were like looking to expand Zapier usage and AI adoption. And the feedback was so good that I eventually like asked my manager, I was like, hey, can I just like make a whole year-long program for our enterprise clients on AI adoption? She was like, I don't know, why not? And so later that day I put out a LinkedIn post and built 6 million pipeline just from that post. And like now we literally have an entire AI transformation program that we run now at Zapier, where we help clients for a year go 0 to 1 with all things AI across their org rollout.
That's pretty sweet. I mean, that's the thing, right? To put it indelicately, if you suck, it's not the market, it's probably you, but it might also be the market.
It might also be your messaging of the thing that people just might not understand that you do. And that's like the whole thing with the AI transformation point that I was making. Like, it could be you or your product. It could be your messaging. It could be the market.
But like you can change your messaging. You can change your solution.
Your
you
product.
Make your solution better. But the market is what it is. And like in your case, right? You guys could have been doing the most magical things on earth there. And if it wasn't,
wouldn't have mattered.
I talk to sales teams a lot where I'm talking about you might have the best solution in a really really hot market, but if that is the number 10 priority of the person you're talking to, it doesn't matter. Yeah, they don't give a crap. There's nothing you can do. So move on. Like use your time better. In this case, right, you found AI and AI transformation is a hella good problem to go after. Right now, everyone wants it.
Burning problem.
Selfishly, part of why I had you on here is I seen you talking about this stuff and I wanted to talk to you about it internally. Like to do all this stuff. I mean, between what you guys had over at Zapier, you had Kieran Flanagan, the CMO, for a little bit. He's super AI focused all the time. I mean, you're there. So many people with great minds who have focused on AI transformation, both externally in the products, but also like I am super curious to hear more about like what have you found and how you and teams over there using it to move faster, better, strong, whatever the Daft Punk wording is, right? Faster, harder, better, stronger, something like that.
Yeah. Look, I always say this about Zapier, and I say this to folks I talk about the AI transformation stuff too all the time. Look, we've got a very high AI literacy rate at Zapier. I think the last published one was like 89, but we just redid all of our stats and we're actually at 97 now. So like it's darn high. And that's not just ChatGPT usage. That's like the token usage across like where they're bringing AI into orchestration steps across the app, agent usage. We have more bots than humans. We have an AI first hiring framework. But look, the thing is, we cheated. I'll tell you how. It's part nature, part nurture, right? The nature part comes from we are a culture of builders at Zapier. We attracted people that loved Zapier. You build a Zapier first day of work. We always have had this rule. You can't buy a piece of SaaS unless you can prove that you can't build it with Zapier. So we've had this builder, tinker, hackathon-y culture since like day one. So when AI came about, it was like, oh, let's ramp that baby up. Right. So that's the nature part of the business, right? This like thing that wasn't cool in the citizen development side, really, like we just like rocked and rolled with, which was cool. But the nurture side came from our CEO, right? Specifically being like 3-alarm fire. Everyone needs to be doing this stuff. We need to start building rituals here. We need to start talking about this stuff. We need to start pumping out features left and right here. We need to just move super duper fast. And he went into just like pure insane founder mode in like the best way possible. That spark led to a bunch of, where we're at now with all these stats. And so what I tell companies is I can't help you with the nature part, but I can help you with the nurture side. And so I basically package all the learnings of everything I learned from the citizen development no code days, everything we've done at Zapier, all the, experiments. And when people are like, well, how do we do that? And what do we do? I say there's 3 ways to answer that question. There's a personal level, a team level, and a company level answer to like the AI adoption problem. On the personal level, you got to spend time playing with these tools, man, in a non-pressurized environment or, problems that no one's asking you to solve quite yet. But actually solve problems. Don't take courses. Don't try to learn stuff. Only take courses or like look at tutorials when you come into that problem. So take a problem you're typically doing manually and like try to solve it with AI to some degree. Very simple example. You're getting a lead coming into your inbox and, maybe you're going to ChatGPT today to be like, okay, how do I write a personalized response to this person? Let me upload this company doc. Let me put in their information I got from that lead via Slack, that lead notification. Let me maybe rewrite what the RevOps team wrote for me in the, email template based on this person, whatever. And then you paste that back in and you email that off to them. Well, in Zapier, you can orchestrate AI where we can take that lead form and as an AI step, we can take the information from there, your prompt, any company doc that's, automatically synced and uploaded every time, it changes, and then be sending that out on your behalf. Or maybe putting a draft in your inbox and slacking you a link. That's like a really cool thing that there's no pressure to solve that. But if you build that one thing, you're like ahead of like 9 out of 10 people on like this AI kind of journey. And that's simply just orchestrating. This is a personal level. You got to be playing stuff. You got to be building stuff. On the team level, teams have to start appointing, and usually it's like RevOps, sales ops, it's like the ops people, right? But like who are your builders are going to be building team-wide builds. And on the company level, there's got to be some framework and, plan to do this stuff because it can't just be top down and it can't just be bottoms up. Bottoms up just turns into wild, wild west. Tops down turns into a bunch of governance and strategy and slide decks with no one actually end up doing anything. You need the lightning and you need the bottle and you need both of them to be meeting together. And the thing that sucks about that is it's going to get a little messy, but that's good. Everyone always goes, well, if we give everyone AI at our company, it's going to be a mess. I'm like, you should only be so lucky to have that problem, right?
If you had everyone building and playing and trying to solve hard problems and applying themselves, yeah, it's going to be a little zany for a little bit, but I guarantee you a good portion of things are going to get solved and you're going to find a lot of time savings. And yeah, you wasted a little bit of time, but maybe you'll waste, 2 units of time or you spend 10 units of time on it, but you're going to gain back solving 2 of those problems in a really, really good way. It's probably going to cover the other 8 that you kind of just like failed at.
And so for this audience, for your audience specifically, right? Like one of the things that we do in those trainings is we sit with different teams and we do like a whole 90-minute boot camp with them. We take them from 0 to 1. We help them build a Zap. We help them build an agent. We help them build an AI step into that Zap and then also bring that agent back into that Zap, which is like a full agentic workflow. Because at Zapier we don't make you choose between agents or automations. You can actually get the best of both of them in one flow. And so if we were sitting with a product team, some of the things that, maybe we would think about them is like, cool, if you've got like a feedback form on the product, a customer can submit some feedback. Maybe that's the trigger. And then the first action would be something like, send that to an agent whose one job is to search all of your other feedback, tickets, whatever, and see if there's anything related there or any Slack conversations or, anything worth like there's stuff related to that. Okay, then bring in that context. And the next step could be use an AI step to take that research that the agent did and their feedback and give you a structured output of how you like to receive that feedback in the right channel. And maybe have that also look at some table in Google Sheets that says like, if it's about this, tag this person. If it's about this, tag this person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then have that agent look at that table and then have it send that message to the right people in Slack. And maybe also copy all of that and put it in your product board or whatever like that. That is like a great orchestrated workflow that like we could help a team build in, I don't know, like 20 minutes.
Right. And that the thing is it would save time. It would get the info to right people faster. It's probably not hard to do, but the secret is you have to just go do it first. You have to try and
do it.
You mess it up.
You got to play around. And we teach this teams all the time. You've got to get hands-on with the tools. If you don't get hands-on tools, you're never going to learn what's possible. And that's why we believe, and there's the last part about like the company rollout, we believe that every company we work with, every single person, intern to CEO, has to get hands-on with the tool. If a company says to us, we only want to do a centralized deployment of this stuff, we don't want anyone hands-on with the tool. And it's fine if they don't want to, like, people long-term, everyone to be hands-on without some type of certification. But without every person learning how to build AI and orchestrate AI, then we actually won't work with that company on the AI transformation front. It just goes against our belief on this thing. Like maybe there's other companies that like are more like IT centric, iPaaS only, that like, right, that's cool. Go with them, man. But for us, we want everyone in your company to get hands on because at minimum, we want them to be a human smoke detector for manual processes that shouldn't exist. And at best, we want them to be a builder.
We have a pretty open policy here about it. We pretty much will expense almost anything around you trying tools. And if you think it's going to help you in your workflow, go for it and just expense it. Don't spend like $1,000 a month. Talk to someone first before you do that, but within reason. And people are pretty aware of what that is. But it's been interesting because I've gone and talked to, people on the marketing team who are more junior or other teams, and they're like, oh, hey, you could probably do this if you're doing this. And like, yeah, we already did. And they've walked me through this entire like agentic flow that they've built out. I'm like, oh, well, keep it up. Well done. Because you let the people solve their thorny problems and give them the room to do it. Yeah.
Nothing beats momentum. I always say this, when the people who know the problem the deepest get the aha moment with these tools, that's where the magic happens. And by the way, that aha moment's not going to happen presenting your whole company a slide deck. It's not going to happen in one like, hey, everybody, here's an enablement session for this new AI tool we have.
No.
It's going to happen by getting hands-on with small groups of people and actually having them build stuff.
I think you said something really interesting I want to make sure people get left with, which is around agents. You talked about basically you have to think of them like an intelligent, very eager intern. And I found that just so often is almost any of these workflows, it's a really concise, not definition, but defining of steps and of what is good and bad. It's iterative. Maybe I'm not doing it right, but it's gotten me there where there's a continued feedback loop of they get closer and closer and closer. But I love the way you put it. Like basically think about how you would onboard and train
It's like a
interns.
person.
Yeah.
If you're a terrible people manager, you're going to be terrible with agents.
Yeah, well, it's fine. We have part of our product we call like an AI product manager that looks across your whole product stack and all the inputs of like your session replay, your analytics, your dev tickets are getting shipped, and customer feedback, and basically uses all that to synthesize from a product team what you need to look at that's important in your digital experience, where people are falling down. And the biggest unlock we found in that was we have this step that basically we call training the AI product manager or onboarding your AI PM. And it's literally how we're able to now teach them the information architecture, your site, the event structure, the network calls, all the important
sounds
pieces.
like some good context engineering. I love it.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that people, you need to train your agents like you would an intern.
I'll say this. Most people will start agents are so easy to build. You use them with plain English now. Most people will start trying to build an agent and be like, this doesn't work. Or they'll give a crappy prompt to ChatGPT. People are like, this doesn't work. Write a social media post. And it's like, imagine you had an intern who was a Harvard graduate, super smart, knew nothing about your business besides the name of your business and what your role was. And you just gave them a task, how would they perform it, right? Probably would be the same. But if you gave them a little bit of context, you said, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, here's an example of what I like and I don't like, and then you actually sat with them for the first 5 times they did it and gave them feedback, you would get a lot better.
I think that's a good way of putting it. So, all right, if people want to follow up and try and sneak time or just ask questions or even just, interact with you because you're a pretty fun guy, is LinkedIn the best place to do it, Phil? Or is there a better spot?
I live on LinkedIn. I love it there. It's my happy place. So LinkedIn, and then also on LinkedIn, if I have like one of those action buttons, like sign up for a newsletter or something on my profile. That is I have an SMS drop line where like once, twice a week, I send out like SMS drops to my whole audience, like different conferences or events that are going on that I think are interesting. Sometimes I do giveaways for like books. I'll do like courses I find cool, but also just do like job listings, or like if you're looking for your next role, I'll promote you in it. You know what I mean? So it's just like my kind of personal network.
Nice. I recommend it highly. I've learned a lot about AI and general other stuff from Phil here. So check it out. Phil Lakin on LinkedIn. If you like the podcast here, check us out too. Give us a follow, whatever platform you're on. Just give us a follow, give us a like, write a review. But most of all, tell a friend, tell a colleague. Like that's how we get the word out of this. We can have more great things like having Phil on to talk about AI. Cool. Phil, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Great having you on. I'm going to look you up when I'm in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. And hope to talk to you again.
Happen.
Yeah, cool. Dude. Let's do it. All right, bro. Thanks. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.